contractions, they feel like a wave and they start and they peak and then they fade away. So when they were peaking, it was really hard to manage. As soon as I started using the vibrator for stimulation, the contractions just would never reach that peak. They would start and just go away and then start like they never reached that peak again. So I've never had an epidural. I don't know exactly how that feels, but to me, I felt the stimulation worked just like an epidural because it made everything way more manageable. It was just unbelievable.
Welcome to the Orgasmic Birth podcast that challenges the traditional narratives around pregnancy, labor, birth, postpartum, and parenting. Too often, these experiences are portrayed as medical events or even something to fear. But what if we could rethink this approach? What if we saw birth not as something to endure, but as sacred, empowering, and something that connects us to our bodies, our babies, and even our own pleasure? In today's episode, we're going to explore how pleasure and body awareness can reshape our approach to childbirth, transforming it into a more joyful, embodied, and deeply intuitive process. We'll dive into ways that self-pleasure practices, body connection, and embracing a more holistic perspective can not only help with pain management, but also open up new pathways for emotional healing and empowerment during pregnancy and birth. Hi, I'm Debra Pascali-Bonaro, founder and director of Orgasmic Birth and host of the Orgasmic Birth podcast. Today, our guest will share her story about how our documentary, Orgasmic Birth, along with other preparation, helped her reframe childbirth by embracing the role of pleasure. It is such an honor to welcome Thabata Devecchi. She's a prenatal educator, birth doula, and founder of Feeling Moms, a platform dedicated to helping mothers reconnect with their bodies, emotions, and babies during pregnancy and birth. She blends prenatal psychology with somatic practices, offering practical tools that help mothers reconnect with themselves as true empowerment comes from within. Her approach focuses on small moments of connection, breath, movement, and pleasure, encouraging moms to trust their intuition and create a joyful, embodied experience through pregnancy, birth, and beyond. Welcome, Tabitha. It's such a pleasure to have you join me today.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I know you wrote when we were doing our surveys and things online as we're looking to learn more about people's experience with pleasure and self-pleasure in pregnancy and birth. And I was wondering if you could take us back to being pregnant, how you prepared, and then what your birth was like.
Sure, of course. So before I even got pregnant, for some reason, I came across that documentary, The Business of Being Born, before it was my first documentary. And that I don't know why I watched that, but that kind of stuck with me. And when I found out that I was pregnant, which was a little bit of a surprise, the first thing that came to my mind was I'm having a home birth. And then my whole family called me crazy. And I'm like, it's going to happen. So then I got into this journey of educating my partner, my husband, on the benefits of home birth and how birth is not this medical thing that we are taught to believe. And we got into a journey of reading and taking classes and documentaries. And then we also came across Orgasmic Birth. And that just made so much sense to me. And the whole pregnancy, I was just like doing lots of breath work and a lot of exercises with my partner to just connect with my body, connect with pleasure, and just like visualizing this whole orgasmic birth experience. But I'll have to say that it wasn't all pleasure, the whole labor. I did envision like this, the birth being just like this whole pleasurable experience the whole entire time. And I was taken by surprise when the contractions started coming in and the intensity started coming in. I was like, oh, okay. That's not only pleasure, but it was definitely pleasure was definitely one of the tools that helped me navigate these strong sensations. And that's why I was so excited when I saw the question on Instagram. I'm like, I want to talk about it. I have to talk about it because people don't really talk about it. And we talk so much about epidural, but self pleasure is like a natural epidural. We need to talk more about it. People need to know this resource.
Yes, and I'm curious, like, I understand from The Business of Being Born, our film, and many other things, what brought you to really have that connection to self-pleasure as something that would be such a powerful tool in birth?
Yeah. So before I even got pregnant, I was already doing some shadow work and self knowledge work and working with a somatic therapist. And I was introduced to tantra, which I know you've always talked about it on your podcast before, tantric practices. So I was already, even before getting pregnant, getting in touch with this kind of work and practices and really connecting with pleasure before getting pregnant. So when I got pregnant and I started learning more about the hormones of pregnancy and hormones of birth and how it's completely connected and like the experiences are so aligned, right? The way our body works during sex and during birth are so similar. So that to me just made sense right away. As soon as I started learning more about it and reading more about it, it just like everything just made sense to me.
Fantastic. And so can you share a bit, like you had a home birth.
I did.
What was labor like? What were some of the things that you did? And I know it's intense, right? There's more
Yes.
than pleasure, as you said, but can you share a bit about the experience and what tools did help?
I will share as much as I can remember because it was very intense. And I really got to the point where I just can't remember much. But I can say that I feel like during my labors, I really used most of the tools available. So I did use lots of movement. I use water a lot, water as in the shower, as in drinking lots of water in the tub. I did use that. I did use sounds a lot. There was a lot of vocalizing, a lot of moaning, and that was very helpful. And I did use self pleasure, and that definitely just felt like an epidural. I do remember thinking like, oh my God. So I did have a vibrator that I used at like different points in labor, but it was really when things got very intense that nothing else was working. What's my last resort? Let's try this. And I have to say, again, it was a home birth. I was surrounded by people that I felt safe and comfortable using self pleasure. So I think it's not for any birth in any setting that this feels like a good tool. So I feel like I was in a nurturing and loving setting, surrounded by very supportive people. So that really helped. So pretty much the contractions got really strong to the point where I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to go to the hospital. And it's actually very funny because after the birth, I was talking to my husband and I was like, oh my God, we got to a point where I was thinking to myself, this is really hard and I don't think I can do this. I really thought about going to the hospital. And then he looked at me and he goes, oh no, you didn't think about going to the hospital. You asked to go to the hospital many times. I'm like, oh, really? Because deep inside, I knew that I didn't want to go to the hospital because I really wanted a home birth, but I was so in that labor land that I didn't realize I was not only thinking, I was asking for it. But anyway, when things got really intense and harder to manage with whatever tools I had available, I tried the vibrator for self pleasure, and it literally felt it cut the intensity of my contractions in half. I don't know if the listeners know, but the contractions, they feel like a wave and they start and they peak and then they fade away. So when they were peaking, it was really hard to manage. As soon as I started using the vibrator for stimulation, the contractions just would never reach that peak. They would start and just go away and then start like they never reached that peak again. So I've never had an epidural. I don't know exactly how that feels, but to me, I felt the stimulation worked just like an epidural because it made everything way more manageable. It was just unbelievable.
It's so incredible to hear, right? Because the science backs that. The science
Right.
says self pleasure really is a good tool to decrease any intensity and to really help with pain. But so
Mhm.
many people don't know it. Was it for you when you decided, okay, I have this tool, I'm going to bring it to birth? How was it to talk with your partner and your birth team? How was everybody's response to this?
Again, my partner, we were doing a lot of education, and he was also part of this, which I call like this embodied birth preparation. So we were doing a lot of breath work together and a lot of work to connect as a couple. So sexuality was already part of our birth preparation. So when we decided to use that, like to incorporate that into our labor and birth, it was just natural because it was already part of our pregnancy. So it's not something that was like, oh no. And the same goes for everybody else in the team because my doula was actually my therapist that we were already working together and doing somatic work and tantra work during pregnancy. I invited her to be my doula because I felt so safe with her. So then she went on to become a doula to be my doula, which was a very nice story. She came all the way from Brazil just to be here to be my doula. So we had this amazing connection. And she was the one who introduced me to all of this. In fact, I think she was the one who introduced me to your work and the Orgasmic Birth film.
How special.
So it was just like everybody was already on the same page and everybody already had this vision of sexuality just being part of the birth experience. And that's why it felt so safe.
And, for many people, the idea that birth can be on the continuum of sexuality is hard to make that connection, even though in some ways it's apparent because it's happening in the same organs, in the same places for pleasure. But what would you say to people that are hesitant going, how can birth and sexuality be connected?
I think we have to take a step back and start reframing the view we had about birth because it became so over medicalized. And that's why I think people can't really put the two things together because we don't see birth as just a part of the woman's cycle and that rite of passage that it is for us anymore, such as the first time you have your menstruation, your period, and then your initiation to sexuality, and then giving birth. But people don't see it that way anymore. It became so medicalized that you're pregnant, you just go to the doctor and you just outsource and look for that. You seek that validation from the experts because they know better because it's a medical thing. So it's hard when you have that vision to, it's hard to put that with sexuality, right? Especially in our society that sexuality is such a taboo. Nobody really talks about it that much. So there's also that piece too. But I think when it comes to birth, the first step is to take a step back and relearn and reframe everything you know about birth. And this is what I try to do with the families I work with. We start with by taking a step back and let's forget everything you know about birth. Let's forget about all the births that you watched on TV, on movies, and let's start to understand like where all these ideas come from and start reframing them. So then we can start opening up our minds to how birth can be sexual and how birth can be a rite of passage, and just reframe the whole idea.
And pleasure in itself, just as a broad word, is often not associated with childbirth. So I know you do a lot of work. Can you offer suggestions for people that want to have that connection, that want to bring body awareness and pleasure to create a more joyful and orgasmic birth experience? What are some of the ways that you support people for that?
So the way I support families in that is I want to take a minimalistic approach because I feel like people are just overwhelmed with information right now. There is a lot of information about birth. There's a lot of information about pregnancy and like all the things to do, which is very important. But I feel like right now it's leading moms to be more stressed and more anxious. And there's just so much to know all of a sudden that they just feel like they have to read that next book, they have to take that next course, or they have to do that next thing to be ready for birth. And all of a sudden, we're just not connecting with our bodies anymore. And we're not paying attention to the simple things, such as how am I breathing today? How is my baby doing today? How is my body feeling today? So that's what I'm bringing to moms. I want to give them really simple tools and small actionable steps that they can take to just connect with themselves again and connect with pleasure because we really get lost into autopilot. You just get going, move on with our days, and we just don't pay attention to very simple things. So one thing that I usually share with families that I work with, it sounds so simple, but it can be so powerful, is just take a moment to make a list of all the things that gives you pleasure, because what gives me pleasure might not work for you because everyone is so unique, right? And not pleasure just in a sexual way, but pleasure in life. What brings you joy? So for someone could be just sitting outside, looking at the sky, reading a book and having a cup of coffee. And for somebody else, it could be going for a walk or eating a piece of chocolate. It's just like simple things that we just lose touch with. So this is usually where I start from with the families I work with. Just take a moment to sit down, pause, connect with yourselves, and figure out what gives you pleasure. And then make a list and try to incorporate like one thing a day for a while. I think this is a good way and simple way to take a first step towards this connection with pleasure. Because we can't go from complete disconnection to using a vibrator in labor. It just doesn't work that way. It's too far. So I feel like we have to take small steps towards reconnecting with pleasure in life. That makes sense.
Yeah, it really does. And I agree with you. And when you said dark chocolate, I always have every day a piece of chocolate as one of my pleasures each day.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so simple, right? So many of the things you shared are just some simple ways of taking that pause to realize we do a lot of things that are pleasurable every day, but we might not call them that until we
Correct.
consider it a practice.
Yes. Yes. And I think we birth the way we live. So we can expect to live in one way in this autopilot way, completely disconnected from our body, from our breath, from our babies. And then all of a sudden you envision this amazing experience of flowing and moving intuitively and connected with your baby, but you're not really living that way. So it's really hard to achieve that when you're not practicing that in your real life, in your everyday life. So I really, this, the idea that I want to bring to moms is just small moments of connection. So it's not this big thing. It's not this huge thing that they feel like, oh my God, now I'm pregnant and I have another thing on my to-do list. Now I have to breathe every day. I don't want moms to feel this way because I feel there's already so much on their plates that they don't need one extra thing to feel like a task. I think connection should just feel good and feel easy to do, not another burden on their list. And that's why I really like this idea of micro moments of connection. That it's like simple and actionable steps that you just incorporate into your daily life, and slowly you rebuild this connection with yourself, with your body, and with pleasure.
I love it. Are you curious about enhancing pleasure and easing discomfort in labor? Orgasmic Birth and Dame present the Pleasure Vibe Fin, a waterproof vibrator designed to empower your journey through pregnancy, birth, and beyond. Boost your oxytocin, ease discomfort naturally, and transform your birth into an empowered and even orgasmic experience. Plus, support postpartum healing and reconnect with your body. Are you ready to embrace the power of pleasure? Click below, learn more, and start your transformation today. And I know you also emphasize intuition and embodied experiences. And I know for a lot of people, like we hear intuition a lot, and some people identify with it, but other people are like, why access intuition? What is that? Can you talk a bit about that and maybe some other small practices that could help people connect to that inner wisdom?
Yes, absolutely. So intuition is that inner knowing that you just know, but you don't necessarily have a logical reason for knowing that, right? So it's that some people call it gut feeling. You just know inside, but you don't know why. This is the way, or this is for me. This makes sense for me. For me, this is what I call intuition. And I think we just lose touch with it. We all have that, but we just lose touch with it because of this autopilot lifestyle that we have nowadays, where you wake up, you get ready, you go to work, you come home, you eat dinner, you go to sleep, and you're not really paying attention to the small, simple things, which is how am I feeling today? How am I breathing today? And or how is my baby inside? Some people don't really take the time to just like connect with their babies. Because for most people, parenting starts after birth. But I think that's a whole new topic for another podcast. So I believe the way to connect with this intuition, again, it can be very simple. When we talk about intuition, I think most people think about just like meditating or sitting down for an hour, or this whole Zen thing that's so far away from most of us. And to me, it can be very simple. Again, taking daily small steps towards mindfulness and awareness and connection. You start listening more to your intuition, and you start seeking less validation from outside and from experts, and paying more attention to how you're feeling. So, one example of listening to your intuition. The other day, I was talking to a client, and she said, "I walked into the doctor's office, and it was just not feeling good. The way they were talking to me, I was just like my body was tensing up. I ended up having high blood pressure, which I never had in my whole entire life, and I'm not really feeling heard and seen. When I try to ask questions, they just brush me off and they say, you don't need this. I brought up having a doula the other day, and she said, no, you don't need a doula. We take care of everything here, and you have to trust us. And she shared like that is just not feeling right to me. So then we started having a conversation, and I started pointing her all the red flags of this conversation, such as if you're not feeling hurt right now, how do you think you're going to feel during birth? If you don't feel like they're listening to your concerns now, do you think they're going to listen to your concerns later? And we were just having a conversation. And at the end of the conversation, she realized she needed to look for a different practice. So she knew that all along, but she wasn't trusting her intuition. And she was caught up in my insurance, this is closer to my house, and like all the practical things. But her intuition was telling, her body was telling her that this wasn't right for her. Her body was telling her she wasn't feeling safe with that practice, but she wasn't paying attention to what her body was telling her. So we had to have this conversation, and this conversation helped her connect with how she was feeling inside and how her body was telling her, no, this is not the way. We should make a change right now. So to me, this is how we connect with our intuition, just by starting to pay attention to what our body's telling us, right? A lot of times you go to a prenatal appointment and the doc and you have to do an vaginal exam, and the doctor goes, you're ready, or sometimes they don't even ask, and your body is not ready yet, but you just go, yeah, because your brain knows you're an appointment and you got to go, but your body's not ready for that yet. So it's okay to say, give me a moment, or wait until your body is saying okay for you to go ahead and do that exam. So this is what I talk about, connecting with your inner wisdom and your intuition and embodiment. It's really just paying more attention to what our body is telling us, because sometimes you're ready in your brain, or you think you're ready in your brain, but your body's telling you no. And when it comes to birth, your brain's gone. You're going to go into labor land and your body is going to take over. And if your body's not feeling safe, then labor and birth can go a complete different way. So that's what I bring to the families I work with. I want to bring this body connection again that we lost, because we value so much the mind, and that's all that matters, right? Mostly for our society. It's whatever you think it's right, it's right. So I want to bring back this connection with the body, because that's where pregnancy, labor, and birth happen, right? It's in the body. The body's so wise that the body takes the mind away from labor so we can actually give birth, right?
Yes.
So that's what I want to start. I would like moms to start practicing and connecting with in pregnancy, because that's where their wisdom lies, I believe. And the science is actually showing that, improving that.
Yes. Said. And thank you for sharing that powerful story, too. I think too many people can probably identify with a visit where they're not seen and heard. And so it was beautiful with your guidance that, that person could connect to that intuition and find a change to be safe. And I do have to say, not in labor and in sex, right? We have to get out of our head and into our body. And
Or correct.
yeah. So it all together really comes full circle. Tabitha, is there one last thing you'd like to offer to people that may be, thinking about pregnancy or are pregnant, getting ready for a birth?
Yeah, I think my main message here and what I've been putting out into the world is the micro moments of connection. I feel like we're getting a little lost in too much information and just feeding our brains with more and more information. And I think we need to drop into our bodies more and just pay more attention to what our bodies are telling us. How are we feeling? Are we feeling safe? How am I connecting with my body? How am I breathing today? How is my baby doing today? And that really can be done. It's not that big of a deal. It can be done with just, again, small, actionable steps. You can even set your alarm on your phone throughout the day to remind you to take 1 minute, just pause, place your hands on your belly, and take small, deep breaths connected with your baby. And that is already a huge gift we're giving, not just to ourselves, but to our babies, because they're feeling everything we're feeling. Their nervous system is developing according to our nervous system. So the more awareness we bring to ourselves, a better and a stronger foundation we're giving to our babies during pregnancy. So that's my main message to the pregnant moms that are listening to us now. It's just small and mindful steps of connection with your baby and connection with yourself.
So beautiful, Tabitha. Thank you so much for joining us. So much wisdom for everyone that's listening. Can you share how they can connect with you?
Yes, sure. People can find me on Instagram, Feeling Moms, and everything I have available, they will find there. I have a free 5-day challenge of micro moments of connection. So every day, moms will get an email with the one super simple step of connection that they can put into practice right away. And at the end of those 5 days, they should feel more connected to their bodies and more connected to their babies. And they can find the link there on the bio. And everything else I share is on Instagram. There are some ebooks on ways to connect with the baby and also ways to nurture the pregnant mom during pregnancy. They're coming up soon now in April.
Wonderful gift. So I love that people can get that free 5 days of connection. So we will put all these links into the show notes as well. So wherever you're listening or watching, just look below and you'll see all of Tabitha's great information. And again, thank you so much for joining us and sharing both your birth story and all your wisdom that you're working with other families with too.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everybody listening. We always appreciate hearing from you. We love your comments, your feedback. We love your suggestions. Maybe you know someone that you think will be a great guest, or you'd like to come on and share your story of both challenge, intensity, and pleasure and joy in your orgasmic birth. So shoot us an email, and we hope to hear from you. And thank you for joining us today.